So you picked a movie to watch with your kid and you remember it being really great, but you haven't seen it in a long time. So of course you go and pop the popcorn and you sit down to watch the movie with your kid and you start watching and there starts to be a kissing scene. And that kissing scene turns into a removing of the clothes scene. And now the scene is they've jumped into bed and they are underneath the sheets. Now, the movie's not explicitly saying what they're doing underneath those sheets, but we can infer that. What do you do, right? Do you turn the movie off? Do you fast forward through the scene and say, that's inappropriate? Do you just get up and say, I've got to go to the bathroom now? You are not alone. This is a common question that many parents have. What do I do when there's a sex scene that shows up in a movie that I'm watching with my kids? Here's what you need to know. First, we're going to talk about prevention, and then we're going to talk about reaction. You can prevent this from happening. You can check out Common Sense Media. They're a website that has loads of reviews on movies and TV shows and will let you know if there will be any nudity or sexual content depicted or discussed. Common Sense Media also provides an age recommendation for when they deem the content to be developmentally appropriate for a child. But of course, you know your child best. Another option is IMDb's Parent Guide section. You can search the movie or TV show that you are deciding to watch, and in the Parent Guide section, you will see a list of the scenes and how the sexual content is portrayed, and oftentimes for how long. IMDb doesn't provide an age recommendation itself, but it does show you how different countries around the world have recommended it by age. Let's take Bridgerton, for example. In the UK, it's recommended for ages 15 and up, but in India, it's recommended for ages 18 and up. I hope these websites can be a resource for you as you navigate what shows and movies to watch with your kids and for your kids to watch in general. And to make it easy for you, I've linked to both of their websites in the description. If you're finding this video to be helpful, you can let me know by giving it a like. Now, of course, you don't have to take those website recommendations. You can simply just watch the movie yourself prior to viewing it with your kid and make your own determination. Now, no matter which prevention method you use, whether it's the website's recommendation or you watch the movie yourself, you are going to have to make a decision because now you know that that movie has sexual content in it. Are you going to watch a movie that has sexual content in it with your child? If you decide, yes, I think the content is okay, then you need to decide, are you going to have a talk with your kid prior to watching the movie about what they will see? Or are you just going to use it as a teachable moment and kind of act as if you didn't know that scene was going to be in there? Many times as parents, we use this prevention method to completely avoid like sex, nudity, or violence from showing up on our screens when our children are watching. And I do think this is worthwhile for our kids up to a certain point. If you're a parent who loves to avoid these types of situations when possible, and you'd rather get prepared and you want to know what to say and when to say it, then my parenting course and program is probably what you're looking for. If you're looking to have the sex talks with confidence. Fill out the form that's linked in the description in the comments if you are curious to find out what it's like to level up your sex talks. My mom used to love watching Bollywood movies, and so I grew up watching them with her. And there are lots of plot twists and love triangles and forbidden love in these movies. But the one thing that there never was in any of the movies we watched was a sex scene, or a kiss for that matter. Now, kissing and sex scenes weren't banned in Bollywood films, and I didn't know this as a kid, but it was kind of like unanimously agreed upon in Bollywood that they would refrain from sex, nudity, and kissing in all of the films. And so what would happen is when the forbidden love was overcome and they finally got together and that inevitable kiss would take place, they would simply break out into this like fabulous dance number and they would start singing about how happy and in love they are instead of kissing. Thinking back to when I was an adolescent, I was watching these movies with my mom. I kind of liked this tradition of alluding to sex and kissing instead of it actually happening. And now as a sex ed teacher, I really like it. By doing it this way, it really offers an opportunity to discuss sexuality, the intimacy and the sensuality of building to a non-kiss or a non-sex scene, right? All of the things that we would say is the butterflies in the stomach, the building of a relationship, instead of focusing on the act of sex. And thinking back, my mom actually did this. She would ask me questions like, why do you think she likes him or doesn't like him? Or, why do the parents not want her to marry him? Now, since I was a girl who was straight, those types of questions and stereotypical heterosexual values kind of made sense for me. It never made me feel uncomfortable, and it actually kind of helped me to see that I had a choice in who I wanted to be with and think about why I wanted to be with him. But it would have been very difficult for me if I was questioning my sexual orientation and continuously seeing those heterosexual couples depicted everywhere, and the questions always referring to heterosexual couples. The point I'm trying to make here is that when you decide to watch a movie with your kid that depicts relationships, be mindful as to assuming your child's sexual orientation when discussing it. Now, when prevention's out the window, you've got to react. You're in the middle of the movie and that kissing scene has progressed and it's happening, they're doing it. What do you do? What do you do in that moment? Here is my recommendation for what to do. You've got to check in with your kid. Do not assume anything. Do not make it a teachable moment. Just check in. You can say something to the effect of, I didn't realize that there would be this much kissing or a sex scene in this movie. Some people are okay with watching sexual content, while others prefer to fast forward through these types of scenes. How do you feel? What is your preference? By offering them this choice, you are addressing the scene and you're also giving them control in that moment. Depending on the type of home environment that you've created and their own attitudes and feelings towards sexual content, they may say, it's up to you, and now you get to decide. Or they may say, I'm okay with it if you're okay with it, and again, it's up to you. However, for many kids, they have a discomfort with watching these types of scenes in general or with their parents, and so they may say, I don't want to watch it. Can you please fast forward? So that's my recommendation for what to do in the moment. Now, beyond that moment, you do have a talk to initiate. I guarantee you, your kid is not going to circle back to you and say, hey, mom, when we were watching that movie the other day, were they having sex? You've got to be the one to initiate this talk, but it's not actually going to be a talk about sex. And here's where I feel my childhood Bollywood movie marathons with my mom have given me a different perspective to this talk. The actual act of sex is just that. It's the act. And you can quickly and easily have a talk about that. And it takes no more than a minute. And it's basically the what is sex talk. But in the context of the movie, it's really everything that has led up to that act of sex that you really want to talk about, right? It's getting your kid to critically think. It's the questions that are around consent and sensuality and vulnerability and healthy versus unhealthy relationships and family dynamics. It's really getting them to critically think about those things and how they lead up to that kiss or that act of sex. If you're going to pause and fast forward through that scene because that's what you and your kid have decided, while you're fast forwarding, you can ask your kid this. Why do you think they decided to have sex? What do you think the consequences will be? Would you say that the characters have made the right decision? Basically, it could be any question. Any question that helps them to develop their critical thinking skills around deciding to have sex would be a much more effective use of this teachable moment than re-explaining what is sex. Now, some parents really want to explain to their kid that that sex scene in the movie is not real and that sex is nothing like that in real life. And while I do think that's important, and it's definitely a conversation to be had, I wouldn't lead with it because you can actually get your kid to make that point for you by asking them critical thinking questions. Asking them questions about the interactions of the characters leading up to that sex scene can actually be more effective here. I would love to know in the comments, were you comfortable or uncomfortable watching a movie with your parents that had a sex scene? And if you want to know how to have the talks in a medically accurate and age-appropriate way, and you've got a kid that's under 12 years old, go on and fill out that form that's linked in the comments and the description. I do look forward to reading and responding to your comments, so go on and leave me a comment. And if you found this video to be helpful, please give it a like.